From thunderstorms to mosquitoes to sunburns, there's a long list of summer nuisances, but perhaps the most controversial of them all are excessively loud motorcycles. Boston police say they do their best to crack down on bikes with extra loud pipes, but actually enforcing noise limits is much more difficult than it sounds. Our own Emily Rooney has that story.
It's an average summer day in the city. People are out to enjoy the warm weather, do some window shopping, and sit outside for lunch or coffee. But then, out come the motorcycles, thundering up and down popular thoroughfares like Newbury and Hanover streets. Vince D'Angelo lives in the North End and runs the eatery Parla. He says he hears motorcycle noise all the time.
I live above it, so I get it at night at like 1 a.m. when they're leaving there, and it's right outside my window.
While D'Angelo has accepted motorcycle noise as part of city life, many other Boston residents and business owners have not. Complaints about loud motorcycles led Boston in 2009 to ban exhaust systems that exceed EPA noise standards. The problem is, many pipes bearing the EPA-approved label are still pretty noisy.
The variations as far as sound levels they're extremely wide. You get something that's just a shade over stock, and stock is fairly quiet, but then you can get to a wide open system, which is basically race ready.
Michael Sienkiewicz manages high-octane Harley-Davidson in Billerica and says the debate over motorcycle noise is often oversimplified.
There's definitely a benefit to some of these louder pipes. Can it be excessive? Yes. You know, from the rider's side, if they're riding obnoxiously, then you know what? You probably deserve the ticket.
In Boston, police admit that many bikes that sound loud to others still comply with the EPA standard, making noise enforcement difficult. Up in Salem, police have also wrestled with noise complaints.
One of the quality of life issues that came up was motorcycle noise in and around our common area, downtown Salem, the common area, Bridge Street leading towards Beverly.
Sergeant Dennis King says Salem police started cracking down on motorcycle noise in 2007, using checkpoints and enforcing a more general state law targeting public disturbances.
When we set up at a point, if we're a couple blocks away and you're coming in and we can hear you from a couple blocks away, that's harsh and unnecessary. That's unreasonable noise coming.
They also did educational outreach to riders, and 7 years later, King says their efforts have paid off.
We'll get some input from some neighborhood groups here and there, but the calls are, 1, 2, 3 times a year we might get a loud motorcycle call.
Back in Boston, Vince D'Angelo suggests another strategy.
I actually just got my license, so I'm going to look to ride next year.
If you can't beat them, join them.
So at what point do noisy motorcycles become a public nuisance? Dave Condon is a longtime biker who chairs the Massachusetts Motorcycle Association, and Paul Tucker is the chief of police for the city of Salem. Welcome to both of you. Dave, I want to start with you tonight. Now, you've heard these loud bikes that the sound is echoing off of blocks to, as we heard, for 3 blocks before they arrive. Why do you think people do that?
I can't say why all riders do. I know some probably are subscribing to the loud pipe save life type of thing. Some just like them loud that way. We're finding that that it happens to be less and less now as the motorcycle community ages. That they are getting quieter. So.
And Chief, Dave just mentioned that, and that's that idea of loud pipes save lives. Is there any validity to that idea?
I don't believe so. Not from a law enforcement standpoint. I'm not sure that there's any data, any hard data to back that up. It simply seems to me that the loud pipes really become a quality of life issue more than a safety issue. Is
that people behaving badly?
I think it is, but I also agree with Dave to the extent that we track the numbers in Salem in terms of complaints and citations. Our high watermark was in 2011. We issued well over 100 citations, and I'm happy to say, and I think it's a direct result of the cooperation that we've had with the motorcycle riders, that number has steadily been going down. Is it perfect? No, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
Now, the EPA seal that's there on the pipe, we want to show that to everyone first off so they can see it. And it's pretty clear, and it seems pretty straightforward to me, that if this is there, then your pipe is okay, and if it's not, then your pipe isn't.
Well, the EPA stamp, as they say there, as you can see, it's embossed on the pipes. That was never designed as a law enforcement tool. It's actually designed as a tool by the EPA to protect the consumer. And the EPA's own lawyers have come out and said in letters stating that this is not a law enforcement tool. And besides that, it's designed to expire after an acoustical adjustment period of 1 year or 3,730 miles, whichever comes first. So even though you have that on there, you still would not be in compliance. And the way they're coming up with the 82 decibels, when they do that testing, it's done in a very sterile environment and under strict conditions. Okay, so that's why, you know, it's the EPA stamp really isn't working. And the other example of that too is the EPA stamp isn't aesthetically pleasing to the manufacturers or to the riders. So the manufacturers sometimes, I know, like on my motorcycle, it's a Harley Davidson, it's under the heat shield. In some foreign models, it's located up underneath the body of the bike. There's no standard as to where this thing has to be.
So for law enforcement, it's not like you can just look at a bike and you see that right up front.
That's correct. And the second problem that we have in Massachusetts is that there's two separate sections under the motorcycle emission and noise law. One is a very objective standard for a police officer in his estimation if he believes it's too loud. And I think that's frankly some of the problems that we've had in proving these cases. What's objectionable to one person may not be for another. The second part that we can use for enforcement, which I believe the MMA is more in favor of, is the decibel meter. My suggestion would be that at the time of inspection, much the same as we have with vehicles, let's do an objective decibel testing at that point and get a sticker from the state of Massachusetts.
Would you be open to that, Dave?
There's a couple of things wrong with that. Maine and New Hampshire have both adopted that policy. And the first problem I'd have with that is it sounds good, but that would actually put an awful lot of these mom and pop motorcycle shops out of business because they wouldn't have the room to conduct the tests, just so they wouldn't be able to do the stickers. So that would leave just these motorcycle inspections open to larger dealerships that have the room to do it. Now, when they started in New Hampshire, I believe it was 2 years ago, we actually went up and observed the testing that was being performed by the dealerships that were issuing the stickers. And they were doing the test completely wrong, whether they weren't improperly trained or they just didn't care. But they also have a vested interest in flunking these motorcycles because they can sell you the parts to do it. So, you know, to me, that would be a double-edged sword like that.
Sure, absolutely. So what's the answer to this, Chief? How do you enforce this, or how do you make it easier for the general public and yet allow motorcycle riders to have their freedom to enjoy their bikes?
There is a true balance here, and having been on the receiving end of many of these complaints, I certainly understand the citizens' complaints, and they're very valid complaints. The second part of it is that I think that the motorcycle public, we want to get to the same place. I just think how we get there is we're a little at crossroads. I think that the decibel meters work. We're never going to recreate in perfect perpetuity the conditions that they see on the street. But I think there has to be some range of a parameter, whether it's decibel meters. The fact is that if somebody alters a motorcycle emission, that's a per se violation. I think we need to stick with that. And I think the education point works. We do voluntary compliance checks in Salem, and the motorcycling public has been very cooperative with that.
I have to agree with that. It's a part of the program that the Massachusetts Motorcycle established. We call it When in Town, Throttle Down. And it involves the educational component of it, and it involves us doing voluntary sound testing with the local police. We've done it extensively on the North Shore, on the South Shore, and down at the Cape. And there's been results. I think the chief, as he said this year, and the tape also said that the noise complaints are down greatly. And because it educates the riders, it educates the police department, it educates the general public, and a lot of times as well as our detractors. And we've actually had at some of them a rider come in that had bought a new bike, had changed his exhaust, found out he was allowed, went back, changed his exhaust, and he was in compliance. So I think it's been a very progressive approach we've taken.
Two sides working together probably is the best bet.
It's the best way to get to where we want to be.
Dave Condon, thank you so much for being here, and Chief, thank you as well.
Pleasure.